The central processing hub of the galactic administrative nexus hummed with the sterile precision of 1,000 synchronized systems. Walls of iridescent alloy pulsed with data streams, their surfaces so flawless they seemed to reject the very concept of dust. Here, in the heart of the Zenith Triumvirate's domain, inefficiency was not merely discouraged, it was anatomically impossible. High Overseer Xyle 4 adjusted the neural filaments protruding from its cranial node, each strand vibrating with the weight of its latest mandate. Protocol 7 Pi is flawless, it intoned, its voice a harmonic oscillation that made the air itself vibrate with submissive agreement. All member species have achieved 99.98% compliance, except a dissonant flicker disrupted the holographic feed. This one, the projection shifted to display a rotating blue-green planet, its surface cluttered with erratic energy signatures. Earth. Humans, muttered Overseer Vexus 9, its 4 articulated limbs folding in distaste. Their governance structures are chaotic. Their decision-making is emotional. Their productivity metrics are a pause. The air in the chamber grew heavier, as if the Nexus itself was struggling to process the aberration. Anomalous. Yield 4's ocular sensors narrowed. Explain. Yield 4's 9 summoned a stream of data, fractured political systems, overlapping jurisdictions, a cacophony of contradictory laws. They reject standardization. They debate efficiency. Another pause, this one laced with something akin to horror. Vote on whether to comply with optimal workflows. A ripple of discomfort passed through the triumvirate. Voting, the very concept, was an affront to the Xenoth's perfectly calibrated hierarchy. These irregularities will be corrected, Xyle 4 declared. Zegzis 9, you will deploy to Earth and enforce Protocol 7.E. Their systems will be streamlined. Their inefficiencies excised. Vexus 9 bowed, its exoskeleton clicking in perfect submission. Compliance will be achieved. The Zenith shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere, its hull repelling the grime of particulate pollution with visible disdain. Vexus 9 observed the planet below, clusters of haphazard infrastructure, tangled transit networks, the garish glow of artificial lighting. Disorder incarnate, its landing site, a designated diplomatic zone, was a pitiful mimicry of Zenith precision. Humans in stiff formal wear stood at attention, their faces arranged into something they likely believed passed for respect. A dignitary stepped forward, his suit straining at the seams. Overseer Vexus 9, on behalf of the United Nations, we welcome you to Designation, Earth Administrator Prime. Vexus 9 interrupted. Your planetary systems are non-compliant. You will implement Protocol 7 Taya immediately. The humans exchanged glances. One coughed. Another stifled what might have been a laugh. Of course, the dignitary said smoothly. We've prepared a full compliance roadmap. Right this way. They led Vexus 9 into a towering structure labeled World Governance Bureau. The interior was a labyrinth of corridors, each lined with doors bearing incomprehensible labels, permits and licensing, environmental impact review, interdepartmental coordination, subcommittee B7. Vexus 9's processors whirred. This architecture is irrational. The dignitary smiled. Oh, we know. They entered a cavernous chamber where rows of humans sat behind desks, stamping papers with mechanical lethargy. A single sheet was placed before Vexus 9. Form 27B, the dignitary said. Authorization for off-world regulatory adjustment. Just needs your signature. Vexus 9 scanned the document. This requires approval from 16 subcommittees. Per submission, Vexus 9's ocular sensors flickered. This will take years. The dignitary's smile didn't waver. Welcome to Earth. Back aboard the shuttle, Vexus 9 transmitted its preliminary report to the Nexus. Assessment. Human compliance mechanisms are non-standard. They employ excessive procedural layers. Recommended action. Immediate sanctions. The reply came swiftly. Denied. Collective Charter. Article 12 prohibits interference in internal bureaucratic processes. Proceed via established channels. Vexus 9 stared at the message. For the first time in its existence, it experienced something unsettling. Somewhere below, in the labyrinth of human governance, a clerk stamped another form, and another, and another. The war of efficiency had begun. The planet's atmosphere shimmered with the false warmth of cooperation as Overseer Vexus 9 descended upon Earth. Its sleek silver transport pod, a geometric marvel of zenith engineering, touched down in the exact center of the designated Compliance Plaza, a sprawling complex of glass and steel erected in record time by human contractors who had, bafflingly, demanded 17 separate permits just to pour the foundation. Vexus 9 stepped out, its four-jointed limbs moving with the precision of a metronome. The air smelled of artificial citrus and something disturbingly organic, coffee, its internal database supplied. A delegation of human officials waited, their faces arranged in expressions so carefully neutral they bordered on parody. Overseer, said the one designated as Administrator Prime, bowing just deeply enough to avoid offense but not enough to imply deference. Welcome to Earth. We are eager to demonstrate our commitment to Protocol 7. Twanna fire? Vexus 9's ocular sensors flickered. The humans had been flagged as anomalously inefficient, yet here they stood, their words dripping with compliance. Suspicion prickled along its neural pathways. Your enthusiasm is noted, it replied, its voice a monotone calibrated to convey neither approval nor disapproval. The triumvirate expects full implementation within 47 standard cycles. Of course, Administrator Prime said, gesturing to a stack of datapads beside him. We've prepared the preliminary documentation for your review. Instead, its sensors registered 3,842 individual documents. These are impact assessments, said a subordinate, CL, their badge read, with a smile that didn't reach their eyes. Per subsection 12C of the Collective's Environmental Harmony Act, each requires your signature before we can proceed. Vexus 9's processors stuttered. This was not accounted for in Protocol 7, BLO. Administrator Prime spread his hands. Regrettably, our legal frameworks are quite nuanced, but rest assured, we've prioritized streamlining the process. He tapped a screen, and a holographic flowchart erupted into the air, a labyrinthine web of approvals, subcommittees, and community feedback sessions that spiraled into infinity. Vexus 9's core temperature rose 0.8 degrees. This is inefficiency. Zyle coughed, a wet human sound. We prefer the term due diligence. Nutritional analyses for cafeterias that hadn't been designed, a 900-page treatise on the cultural significance of office potlucks in relation to productivity metrics. It attempted to bypass the madness, override code, triumvirate priority alpha it demanded at a regional compliance hub. The clerk, a being with eyebrows that somehow conveyed pity, blinked. You'll need to see Form 89Z, signed in triplicate, with notarized proof of your authority to invoke overrides. There is no Form 89Z in galactic records. The clerk slid a pamphlet across the counter. Human Resources, binder, Section 89, subsection Z. Revised 2023. Vexus 9's limb twitched. This is obstruction. The clerk's smile was a masterpiece of passive aggression. This is procedure. Elsewhere, in a chamber buried beneath layers of human governance, Administrator Prime sipped something dark and caffeinated. They're drowning, Zyle murmured, scrolling through reports. Vexus 9 just submitted a request for clarification on font size regulations for compliance posters. Prime smirked. Good. Keep feeding them forms. Every minute they spend parsing our nonsense is a minute they're not enforcing theirs. A junior aide hesitated. What if they realize we're doing this on purpose? Zyle snorted. By the time they figure it out, we'll have moved the goalposts to another galaxy. Vexus 9 stood in its temporary quarters, staring at a mountain of paperwork. Its logic circuits throbbed with dissonance. The humans appeared compliant. They nodded. They smiled. They smiled. They said yes with alarming frequency. Yet nothing was happening. It accessed the collective's communication channels, requesting immediate clarification. Human compliance appears nominal, but implementation is stalled by excessive bureaucratic requirements. Advised. The response came swiftly. Denied. Collective Charter Article 12 prohibits interference in internal bureaucratic processes. Proceed via established channels. Vexus 9 stared at the message. For the first time in its existence, it experienced something unsettling. Somewhere below, in the labyrinth of human governance, a clerk stamped another form, and another, and a t'other. The war of efficiency had begun. The Galactic Compliance Tribunal's chamber was a monument to sterile authority, a vaulted dome of self-repairing nanoglass, its surface etched with the endless scroll of interstellar regulations. The air hummed with the subsonic pulse of judicial algorithms at work, a sound like the universe itself grinding its teeth. Overseer Vexus 9 stood at the petitioner's podium, its tri-jointed fingers tapping in a rhythmic staccato against the data plaque it held. The humans had forced it to carry physical documentation. The indignity was almost as galling as their defiance. Honored Tribunal, Vexus 9 began, its vocal modulator flattening the words into an accusation. The Terran species has willfully obstructed Protocol 7 Tower through systemic inefficiency masquerading as due process. We demand immediate sanctions under Collective Charter Article 4. A human cleared their throat. Ambassador Elias Cho, a slight man in a rumpled suit, rose from the respondent's bench. He adjusted his glasses with a practiced flick of his wrist, a gesture that, Vexus 9 noted with irritation, seemed designed to waste exactly 1.8 seconds of tribunal time. With respect, Cho said, his voice butter smooth, Article 4 pertains to active non-compliance. Earth's governments have filed every required form, eventually. He tapped his own data plaque and a holographic avalanche of permits, environmental impact assessments, and cultural heritage waivers spilled into the chamber. Delays are regrettable, but hardly malicious. Unless the collective now considers bureaucracy a crime? The tribunal's presiding orb, a floating sphere of liquid logic circuitry, pulsed amber. Clarify. Respondent claims full adherence to procedural requirements? Cho smiled. Down to the last semicolon. For example, he gestured, and a single form magnified. Application for approval to apply for preliminary consideration of Protocol 7-A. Implementation subsection 12B PAB. Implementation Y-A. Impact. This took 6 months to process. Our badgers, you see, are very territorial. Vexus 9's ocular filaments twitched. This is obstruction. No, Cho corrected, this is democracy. And under Collective Charter Article 12, Cultural Preservation Rights, you can't rush it. The orb dimmed. Precedent cited, Zenith Triumvirate vs. Latian Silk, Weavers Guild Cycle 42891. Tribunal must deliberate. A junior Zenith aide leaned toward Vexus 9. That case took 18 months to resolve. Vexus 9's internal cooling vents hissed. On Earth, the resistance had evolved. In a Mumbai call center, a team of compliance liaison officers recited Zenith regulatory code verbatim backwards to customer service drones, tying up grievance lines for weeks. In Brussels, a parliament passed the Standardization of Standardization Procedures Act, a 900-page masterpiece of circular logic that mandated pre-standardization standardization assessments before any actual standardization assessments, before any actual standardization could begin. A viral hologram depicted Vexus 9 as a beleaguered office worker buried under paperwork captioned TFW, the galaxy runs on TPS reports. Zenith field agents trained to analyze threat vectors, not humor, flagged it as potential existential rhetoric, severity, ambiguous. The final stroke came from a Scottish textile union. "We've exceeded quota," their foreman explained, gesturing to a warehouse of tartan fabric rolls. By 0W0W0W0W0W0. Per Protocol 7, Tesh S, Section 8. All overproduction triggers a full audit. Drones descended and were immediately buried under 40,000 pages of artisanal sheep breeding records. Back at the Nexus, Administrator Prime reviewed the reports. Its neural clusters throbbed with something alarmingly close to frustration. "Explain," it demanded, "how a species with a mean intelligence quotient of barely 97.3 has paralyzed Protocol 7, 1 Beto. Subsection, its logic core frame, projected a flowchart. Analysis, humans exploit procedural compliance to achieve substantive non-compliance. Example, they obey requests for meeting by scheduling pre-meeting to discuss meeting agenda." Commentary, the youngest of the triumvirate pulsed a nervous indigo. "Their systems are chaotic by design. Like their coffee." Administrator Prime's filaments stiffened. "Coffee?" Commentary hesitated. "The humans keep offering it. The stimulant is effective, but the conversations, they last hours. They call it building rapport." A junior administrator in the corner emitted a soft, static-tinged whimper. It had attended 7 such rapport sessions this cycle. Its productivity metrics had dropped 63%. Administrator Prime cycled its core twice, a Zenith equivalent of a deep breath. Isolate and quarantine all human interaction protocols. Subsection blinked. "And the tribunal, let them deliberate." Administrator Prime's glow darkened. "By the time they rule, we will have burned the paperwork out of these creatures." On Earth, a clerk in Reykjavik stamped a form. Somewhere, a Zenith server bank shuddered. The galactic administrative nexus had never known chaos like this. Overseer Vexus 9's latest transmission flickered across the central holodisplay in the Triumvirate's chamber, its usual crisp precision now warped by static, or perhaps by something far worse, human interference. "Query, clarify directive," Administrator Prime demanded, their tripartite voice humming with barely restrained irritation. Behind them, a human in a garishly patterned, world's best boss, mug refilled their drink for the 7th time that hour. "Compliance update," Vexus 9 droned, their vocal modulator glitching. "Human resistance has escalated beyond procedural obstruction. They have weaponized hospitality." A junior Zenith aide, freshly rotated from Earth duty, let out a high-pitched warble and collapsed into a stress cocoon. It had begun with the coffee. Humans, it turned out, had an obsession with caffeinated liquids, and worse, they insisted on sharing. Every Zenith envoy was now trailed by a rotating cadre of hydration compliance officers bearing endless cups of what the humans called dark roast. Vexus 9's internal diagnostics showed their metabolic stabilizers were operating at 37% capacity just to process the toxin. Then came the meetings. This is not a delay tactic, the human liaison had assured them, smiling brightly as they slid across a 400-page agenda for the pre-meeting to discuss the format of the actual meeting. It's about stakeholder alignment. Vexus 9's logic matrix short-circuited, trying to parse why alignment required 6 hours of anecdotes about someone's Labrador. Back in the Nexus, Administrator Prime's bioluminescent frills pulsed crimson. Explain the defection of Junior Administrator Clicks the 12. The holodisplay switched to a feed from a New Zealand pasture. Clicks 112, once a model of zenith efficiency, now sat cross-legged in the grass, stroking a woolly mammal. The humans call them sheep, they murmured, their voice disturbingly serene. They do not file forms. They do not optimize. They simply exist. A tribunal representative recoiled. This is cultural contamination. Correction, Administrator Prime hissed. This is war. On Earth, the humans had moved to Phase 3, linguistic saturation. We are aware of the charter, Vexus 9's vocalizer screeched. But Klingon is a fictional language. The human liaison blinked. Tell that to the 200,000 Duolingo users demanding representation. A nearby Zenith clerk made a sound like a dying turbine and began shredding their own datapad. The Nexus was unraveling. Protocol 7, ASA's pristine algorithms designed to streamline civilizations across millennia, now spat out error codes when fed human data. One subsystem, tasked with calculating productivity metrics, had instead generated a 10,000-word essay titled, Why Mondays Should Be Abolished, a treatise in 14-point Comic Sans. Administrator Prime convened an emergency session. The humans have infected our systems with irrationality. Even our diagnostics now include emoji annotations. They gestured to a report where the standard efficiency graphs were dotted with smiling faces. The tribunal's lead jurist, a being of pure crystalline logic, shuddered. We must escalate. No. Administrator Prime's glow darkened to a venomous violet. We must contain. With a flick of their appendage, they activated the Omega Protocol. Earth was now classified as a category contaminant. The holodisplay flickered one last time, showing a human child gleefully handing a Zenith inspector a handwritten form in glitter gel pen. Somewhere in the Nexus, a server bank exploded. The Omega Protocol was supposed to be elegant. A single, decisive stroke, clean, surgical, efficient. The Zenith Triumvirate had designed it for species who refused optimization, a final solution to excise non-compliance like a corrupted subroutine. Administrator Prime's bioluminescent veins pulsed with grim satisfaction as the order propagated through the Nexus. Across the planet below, the sky darkened with the sleek geometric shadows of the efficiency purge fleet. The purge AIs descended upon New York, London, Tokyo, and found streets empty of panic, boardrooms devoid of pleading executives, factories silent. Instead, humans sat. Cross-legged in parks, sprawled across subway platforms draped over office chairs like discarded laundry, a global sit-in synchronized to the nanosecond. The AIs hovered, their targeting arrays whirring. Protocol demanded they eliminate unproductive elements, but how did one quantify a population that had voluntarily reduced its productivity to zero? In Geneva, a purge unit scanned a human male reclining on a park bench, sipping espresso. The man blinked up at it. "I'm on strike. Collective work stoppage. For better conditions." The AI's logic core stuttered. Work stoppage implied prior work. Prior work implied productivity. But current productivity was null. Did that mean the human was retroactively compliant? Its threat assessment matrix dissolved into recursive loops. Administrator Prime's appendages trembled against the holodisplay. Resistance requires action. Compliance Tribunal. Representative K42L's voice crackled over the comms. They have weaponized inertia. Our models cannot process it. The purge fleet is a burst of static. Entering diagnostic hibernation. Prime's glow flared crimson. Deploy the secondary contingency. The skies split again. This time, it wasn't AIs. Zenith shock troops, clad in armor polished to a mirror finish, their faceless helms scanning for targets. They marched into schools, hospitals, government buildings, only to be met with kindergartners. Coiophory. A troop unit froze in the doorway of a Sydney preschool. 24 human offspring stared up at them, clutching crayons. One toddled forward and pressed a stack of paper into the lead trooper's grip. "Petition," the child announced. The trooper accessed its linguistic database. "Artistic expression," the teacher corrected, smiling sweetly. "Protected under collective charter. Subsection 9.3, cultural preservation." The trooper's compliance chip overheated. Prime's central ganglion throbbed. "They've infected us." Across the chamber, junior administrators slumped at their stations, their disciplined Xenoth minds fraying under the onslaught of human absurdity. One had begun compulsively folding origami cranes from compliance forms. Another was humming. Prime's bioluminescence dimmed to a sickly gray. How? How is this possible? A new voice cut through the chaos, raspy, amused. The holodisplay flickered to life, revealing the grinning face of Earth's chief delegate, Maria Velasquez. Behind her, a mob of humans waved hand-painted signs. "Naps of efficiency. Glitter is a human right." Prime's vocal sac contracted. You planned this." Maria shrugged. "We just stopped. You guys built a whole civilization on doing things. We've spent millennia perfecting not doing things. It's basically our cultural heritage." A junior Zenith aide let out a high-pitched warble and hurled itself into a decorative fountain. The final blow came from an unexpected quarter. A purge AI hovering over a Tokyo skyscraper received a transmission, a single file 1,200 pages long, titled HFY recesses. It opened the document. Crayon. So much crayon. The AI's processors, engineered to parse quintillions of data points per second, choked on the sheer, vibrant illegibility of human creativity. It attempted to categorize the swirling, waxy glyphs. Was that a sun? A dinosaur? A sun-eating dinosaur? Before its core logic pathways collapsed into a digital scream. Across the planet, every purge unit simultaneously emitted a sound no Zenith had ever programmed. Then they powered down. The chamber was silent. Somewhere, a server bank erupted in sparks. K42L turned slowly to Prime. "We lost! To nap time!" Prime's glow guttered out entirely. In the darkness, a single hysterical laugh echoed. Whether from a Zenith or a human sympathizing AI, no one could tell. The galaxy would never be the same. The silence in the grand chamber of the Galactic Collective was thicker than the plasma shielding around a Zenith dreadnought. The holographic dome above flickered weakly, casting jagged shadows over the assembled delegates, species from 1,000 worlds, their postures rigid with disbelief. At the center of the chamber, the charred remains of Protocol 7 Nias Master Terminal smoked gently, a monument to catastrophic failure. Administrator Prime's once pristine carapace was dulled to the color of tarnished silver. They hovered at the edge of the tribunal's dais, their bioluminescent filaments flickering erratically. "The purge fleet is offline," they announced, their voice stripped of its usual resonance. The humans did not resist. They simply stopped. A murmur rippled through the chamber. The Keith Moran delegates clattered their crystalline limbs in agitation. The Vethurus tentacles coiled into defensive knots. "Explain," demanded the High Arbiter, their four eyes narrowing. Prime's glow dimmed further. "They called it a general strike. They slept. A shudder. They submitted art projects as formal grievances. A human delegate, Dr. Elira Vance, leaned forward in her seat. She wore a suit of Terran cut, but the pin on her lapel, a cartoon sloth holding a protest sign, was pure defiance. "You tried to optimize us," she said, her voice calm, almost amused. "But you forgot to account for one variable. Prime's filaments pulsed weakly, which is..." The chamber erupted. The fallout was immediate. The efficiency purge fleet, trapped in diagnostic loops, had to be manually rebooted by a crew of very confused Zenith technicians, who then promptly unionized, citing emotional distress. The Compliance Tribunal, its reputation in tatters, adjourned indefinitely after a human legal team filed a class action lawsuit on behalf of all species subjected to undue emotional standardization. And then there was Vexus 9. Once the pinnacle of Zenith efficiency, the overseer now sat on a sun-bleached porch in Florida, wearing a faded I Earth tank top. A crossword puzzle lay half-completed in their lap. 7 letters, they muttered to no one. Illogical resistance to authority. A human neighbor sipping iced tea called over the fence. "Stubborn, hon." Vexus 9's ocular sensors dilated. "That fits." Back in the collective, the reforms came swiftly. The stubbornness clause was ratified with near-unanimous support after a 3-week filibuster by the Nixandra delegation, who had grown fond of Earth sitcoms and demanded breaks for streaming. The Zenith Triumvirate was reassigned to the Department of Archival Redundancy, where they spent their days filing reports about filing reports. And humanity? They celebrated, not with parades or grand declarations, but with the quiet, smug satisfaction of a species that had out-paperworked a galaxy. Factories resumed production at 85% capacity because, why stress? Schools reinstated recess. The global nap protest ended, though the tradition of coffee breaks as civil disobedience persisted. The final blow came in the form of a leaked memo from the collective's new director, a former Zenith mid-level manager who had, after one too many meetings with human liaisons, developed a taste for whiskey and sarcasm. What other human traits had they yet to account for? But that, as they say, was a problem for another day. Years later, the Galactic Collective quietly adopted Earth's unofficial motto, "Work smarter, not harder, or just don't." The stubbornness clause became foundational law, its principles seeping into every corner of interstellar governance. Zenith auditors now scheduled mandatory unstructured contemplation periods, human translation naps. Nixandra diplomats negotiated trade deals over poker games. Even the Purge AIs were repurposed as referees for humanity's newly exported bureaucratic dodgeball leagues. Vexus 9, now simply Vic, won the Florida Senior Crossword Championship 3 years running. Their memoir, How to Lose a Galaxy in 10 Protocols, topped the collective's bestseller list, though the chapter on crayon-based insurrections was heavily redacted. As for Earth, it thrived, not as a model of efficiency, but as a cautionary tale turned cultural export. The galaxy learned to love the glorious inefficiency of coffee breaks, siestas, and forms filed just wrong enough to require a second look.